But the thing that really just said, Alita, it's so important for you to be you, is after wearing my braids, I had countless junior people, Black women, come up to me and say, because you wore your hair in braids, I felt empowered to wear my hair in braids.
Wow.
And I felt empowered to be me. And that's when I really realized it's our responsibility to be authentic, to be our authentic selves, because it gives other people their sort of power to feel like they can be their authentic selves.
Welcome to Show Your Receipts, where we believe if you can see it, you can be it. Receipts are evidence or proof that something has occurred. Our guests are evidence that Black excellence is alive and well. They will be sharing their receipts on how they've been able to accomplish so much in their life. I'm your host, Tony Jackson. Let's get started. Welcome to Show Your Receipts, where we believe if you can see it, you can be it. I am super excited for our guest today. I'm going to read a little bit of her bio. Miss Alita Wingfield has an incredible story. She was born in Brooklyn and grew up in Long Island. She graduated summa cum laude from Spelman with a BA in political science. She graduated cum laude from Howard University Law School. She graduated cum laude from Temple University with a Master's of Law. She's currently managing director and LCD head of talent at Morgan Stanley. She is the first Black woman partner in legal and compliance division and the first Black person, period, in compliance. And we have her here today. Welcome, Alita. We are so excited to have you here today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about my career.
Absolutely. So let's jump right into it. They say that the money that we earn as an individual, as a company, is usually directly related to the problems that we solve. Can you talk to me about what kind of problems do you solve in your particular position as a managing director at Morgan Stanley? And maybe even overall, what kind of problems Morgan Stanley solves as a company?
Yeah, and I'll start with Morgan Stanley. I mean, Morgan Stanley is a company that is really about problem solving, right? About taking money and making it work for the individual, for the corporation. Invest in that money in a way that you then have lots of opportunities in your life and for your organization. So for individuals, our main goal is to make sure people can retire, can go on that vacation, can send their kids to college. And we manage money in a way that allows people to have those types of opportunities. So that's really our goal. And for organizations too, to be able to employ the people they employ, to be able to merge with other organizations to make their organization better. And so we're there to provide that type of guidance and support to people and individuals and institutions so that they can continue to thrive and invest their money in the right way. In terms of individually, my main goal in my new role, because I've taken on a number of roles and we can talk about that, it's really all about people and investing in people. And although our firm is about ultimately investing money, our biggest and our greatest asset are our people. And my role as head of talent for the legal and compliance division is really about that. My goal is to make sure everyone who walks in the door at Morgan Stanley feels safe, respected, and valued, right, within the legal and compliance division. And as managing director, I have one of the most senior roles in the organization. I've been promoted throughout into officer roles, vice president, executive director, and then managing director. And so to be a managing director at Morgan Stanley really just means you're a partner in the firm. You can be in legal, you can be in the business, you can be in HR and other places, but it just means you've reached the highest promotion in your department.
Absolutely. And so, it was very interesting for me to go through your bio because it was so much. I'm like, I can't share everything that she's done. It's incredible. It's just your trajectory as far as climbing the corporate ladder. Talk to me about that process, right? From starting out in legal and then this incredible upward trend of your career over the last 15 to 20 years with Morgan Stanley. Was this kind of what you thought of when you started, that you were going to be where you are today?
No. If you would have asked me 15 years ago, would I be doing what I'm doing now? I probably would not have imagined it, to be honest with you. I always had a dream to become a lawyer. I mean, ever since I was probably 6 years old, I had two brothers and older brothers, and I was like the fighter in the house and the one who was always arguing. So I was like, "You're going to be a lawyer," and so I kind of got inspired by that, to be honest. And I always wanted to be a lawyer. Undergrad, I majored in political science because I thought that's what all lawyers do. That's not necessarily the case. There's lots of lawyers who major in other things. I loved politics too. I don't particularly love it now, but I loved politics, and I worked on campaigns throughout my time in Atlanta, Georgia. But I knew I was going to go to law school, and I always thought I was going to be either a prosecutor or a defense attorney or a civil rights attorney. And part of the reason why I went to Howard Law was because of the great civil rights attorneys that it produced, the great Thurgood Marshall, first African-American Supreme Court justice. And I knew I would get a great education there. And so I decided actually to go to a law firm really because, to be honest, they were recruiting very heavily and they were paying very well. and I had my first son in my third year, the week before I graduated from law school. And so my husband was about to start medical school. I had a newborn. And so I wanted to be in a place where I could support my family. So I went to a law firm. I worked there a number of years. When I came to Morgan Stanley, I came to be in, at that point, our litigation and regulatory group. I thought I would be perhaps doing some regulatory matters, and which was very close to the work that I was doing at the law firm. And I realized there were lots of other gaps that needed to be filled in our legal and compliance department, more focused on how we run our department and the business of our department. And so I quickly sort of adapted to doing things outside of handling cases, building matter management system processes, working with information technology, and really building processes and database. And that kind of led me in a totally different direction. I did that and some version of that for 10 years. And then I had an opportunity to go to the business where I worked in risk management. Now, all of this gave me an opportunity to wear my legal hat and plenty of chances to do that. And so I never felt like I stopped being a lawyer. But I went to the business for 2 years. I did risk management, which is basically determining what risk you have before you enter into any type of engagement, whether it's a new product, a new jurisdiction, a new anything, and figuring out how you mitigate those risks. Because in our business, there's always going to be risk. And so how do you figure out how to mitigate those risks? And so I really loved that because litigation was always so after the fact. There's a problem, you try to solve it. In risk management, you were able to think about the problems ahead of time and solve it. And then after 2 years, I had an opportunity to go back to legal and compliance in this compliance role. And that was compliance training. I had no idea what that was. I had no idea what compliance was, but I took the opportunity because it was really a chance for me to try something new, to learn something new, and to have a large impact on the company. And recently, as you noted, I was recently changed roles to head of talent, which gives me an opportunity to really have impact on people, which is really ultimately the joy of my life and things. And this is the kind of work I've been doing a little bit off the side of my desk for my whole career. So I'm really happy about that.
That is amazing. I love your story. Also, it's amazing. You and your husband, you guys are like the modern day Huxtables, which I just love that. I love that. Talk to me about what does a normal day-to-day life look like for a managing director at Morgan Stanley? Are you just, meetings all day long? What does a normal day feel? Or is there such thing as a normal day for you?
I don't think there's a such thing as a normal day for anyone anymore, to be honest. I asked that question of lots of people, and the day looks so different for many, many people, even down to teachers. My daughter's a second grade teacher, and I ask her day, and they have some structure, of course, throughout the day, but she's doing something different. And at Morgan Stanley, we often laugh and call it Meeting Stanley because you are in meetings literally all day. In meetings, I'm like, when do I get any work done? So between the phone calls and the Zoom meetings now and the in-person meetings, we are scheduled back to back. And literally, I could be changing my hat every single meeting as to what I'm talking about, where I'm giving input, whether someone who needs to actually give input or just be informed. And for me as the head of talent, in one meeting I could be talking about our recruiting strategy. The next meeting I could be talking about diversity and inclusion, which I spent my whole career working on. Another meeting I could be talking about, well, what about career development? What do we need in talent development? What are the things that people lack? I could be talking about onboarding. What do we want people to experience their first 30 days at Morgan Stanley? So literally every meeting, there's a new topic, new subject. There's no day that looks alike. I'm also the co-chair of our firm-wide Black Employee Network. And so there are about 3,800 Black employees in the US at Morgan Stanley. And we have a number of affinity groups, and the Black Employee Network is one of them. So I spend tons of time working on programs and initiatives for our Black employees at Morgan Stanley as well.
That is amazing. I read the biography of John Mack, and it made me very impressed with Morgan Stanley and just what you guys have done and your philosophies and what you guys believe in. And so it's awesome to see that you are one of the leaders in that organization. And so, oh, you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to say I would not be there 19 years later if I didn't believe in the company. And honestly, the core values align with my core values. It's a great organization. All of our organizations need work, right? And we have to put ourselves in a position to give back and to be the solution to some of the problems that we see. One of the reasons why I quickly accepted the opportunity to co-chair the Black Employee Network, because there's plenty of things that we still have to do, right? To make sure we're not facing microaggressions, to make sure that Black employees are getting the opportunities that other employees have, to make sure that there's talent development, to make sure that people sort of understand our culture, right? We come into a culture that we have to sort of make sure we understand, but are we also making sure that people understand what we bring to the table? And so it's a great place to be. But there's always work, right? That to make it better.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about your background, studying law, going to law school, because many people will say, well, wait a minute, you were supposed to be a lawyer and now you're doing, these other things, and it seems to not be connected. I have my youngest sister, she just graduated from law school, but her decision is not, I'm going to go be a lawyer. She's thinking about so many different areas and avenues that she can go with. Talk to me about the flexibility that, a law degree provides and opportunities that it provides.
Yeah. I mean, I think that people should hear that just because you started on a path doesn't mean you have to stay on that path, because there may be things that you discover along the way are more fulfilling to you, that you're better at, that is closer aligned to your superpowers. And so, yes. And I also think people should hear, because I say this all the time, a law degree is probably one of the best degrees that you can get, because first of all, it's relatively quick, 3 years. You have to do a lot of reading now. You have to get used to reading, and there's a lot of participation, and there's some stress related to getting the degree, but it goes by pretty quickly and gives you so much flexibility and opportunity. So yes, I started off the path that a lot of people start off, going to a law firm, practicing law. And then I found so many other interests that I have. And having that law degree opened so many doors, because people assume, rightfully or wrongfully, that you have certain skills and that you're able to learn, that you're able to analyze things, and that you just come with an extra level of education where you can take on almost anything. I would say the 4 jobs I've had in my 19 years at Morgan Stanley have all been on the faith that I can do it, that I can learn it, that I can figure it out. They've all been new sort of opportunities. So I love having my law degree, and I always consider myself a lawyer, but I have certainly taken a different path than what I originally set out to do, and have no regrets at all.
Absolutely. You mentioned the phrase, you said many people have a certain superpower. Talk to me about, could you dig into that a little bit more and explain to me what you mean? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all do. And for me, it's thinking about authenticity, which is another thing I'd love to get into. because we struggle with that a little bit, especially as Black people in corporate America, like how authentic can you be at work? And I always tell people your authenticity, being you, is your superpower. There's no one else. There's no other Tony Jackson. There's definitely no other Alita Wingfield. And we bring certain things to the table. And for me, it's been when I've been able to lean into who I really am as a person, bring my personality to work. I mean, there were years where I never wore red to work. There were years where I would never wear, red lipstick or braids. And so, and I would say, the minute I was able to lean into who I really am and what I really want to wear and how I really want to present myself, I was able to really create relationships that I needed to create. I was able to, dig in a little bit more into the work that I was doing because I wasn't so worried about like being this other person. And so when I say superpower, it's that special thing that only you have, the thing that you bring to the table. And it's an opportunity for you not to try to be somebody else. Like Superman can't be Spider-Man and Spider-Man can't be Batman, but when they lean into their own power, they're great. And so that's what I mean. Everybody has their own thing, right? Or what that is. And the minute that you kind of figure that piece out, I mean, mine is about being able to build relationships. Mine is about, having fun. I'm a big person. I come to work. I tell everybody I come to work to have fun and meet people. That's what I do all day. I have fun and I meet people. And so it's really leaning into that really makes you unique and indispensable.
Absolutely. I want to dig into that a little bit more about the authentic because that was on my mind. As I'm looking at you and I saw the braids and I'm like, it's not what I would stereotypically think of when I think banker, somebody working in banking. I had my own journey with that as well. It was, my braids was facial hair. I'm like, I was always told you got to be clean shaven if you want to be taken seriously in the business world as a man. Talk to me about when was the moment where you said, you know what? I'm going to wear braids when I want to wear braids. I'm going to come, I'm going to, dress how I feel. What was it? Was it a progressive thing over time where you kind of got more comfortable? Or did you have a moment where you said, you know what? I'm just going to be me no matter what?
Yeah, I think it was, if I'm being honest, it was definitely a progressive thing over time. And it was about me getting more comfortable with who I was as a person in corporate America and bringing, who I am as a person little by little, honestly, to the team. The braids, funny enough, came as a result of the pandemic because at some point I couldn't go to my hairstylist and I had to figure out what am I going to do with this hair? And so I was started like with twist outs and doing different things. I actually grew out my perm during the pandemic. And then I started wearing braids. And at first, it's always a little scary because you're always going to get somebody who's going to say something. But I tested sort of different hairstyles along the way because, Black women, we like to experiment with our hair. So one day it's short, one day it's long, one day it's curly.
Yes.
And, we have to deal with the initial day of coming in with different hair and people like commenting and all that. And so once you get past the first day, it's all good. But you do have to do that. With the braids, it was a little bit out of necessity, but I also realized how much I loved them, like how much time it saved me. Like I was able to work out in the mornings without have to worry about so much connected to just having your natural hairstyle. But the thing that really just said, Alita, it's so important for you to be you, is after wearing my braids, I had countless junior people, Black women, come up to me and say, because you wore your hair in braids, I felt empowered to wear my hair in braids. And I felt empowered to be me. And that's when I really realized it's our responsibility to be authentic, to be our authentic selves, because it gives other people their sort of power to feel like they can be their authentic self. So I'm sorry it took me so long, to be honest with you. But yeah, so today is braids. Who knows? Next week it may be something totally different.
Exactly.
People are used to seeing that, which is amazing.
Yeah. When you first started with the braids, did people want to touch your hair?
Oh gosh, the touch your hair thing is so. I've had to talk about that. We had lots of important discussions after the pandemic and post George Floyd. about microaggressions, about being Black in corporate America, that absolutely came up, and folks were kind of very surprised that that was a thing.
Yeah.
Is Lots of microaggression people are needed to be educated about, which I thought was a really good opportunity that we took to have those conversations, and we continue to have those conversations. But yes, I've had a number of times when folks has to touch my hair, and the older and wiser I got, the better I was at, like, putting that to a halt. But when you're younger, it's just something you're like, oh my God, how do I deal with this?
Yeah. This is the PSA to all my white viewers out there. When you see your Black colleague with an afro or braids, do not touch their hair unless you ask, and probably don't even ask to touch their hair.
Don't ask. Don't even ask. It's really okay. Like, if you don't touch it, like, there's nothing to feel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to dive into, let's go back. Let's go back, Alita. Let's go back to Brooklyn. Let's go back to Long Island. How do you guys say Long Island?
Long Island.
Long Island. Let's go back to Long Island. Let's talk about that. So who were some of your early childhood influences? Talk to me about your early elementary school. Did you have like really good teachers? I would love to hear about, what early life was for you.
Yeah, sure. So born in Brooklyn, I stayed in Brooklyn for 6 years. So I didn't spend a ton of time there. My brothers can probably tell you more about Brooklyn than I can. I had an opportunity. My dad is from Guyana. So he moved here when he was 19 years old. He met my mom in Queens. So I think like I said, he was the original coming to America, except not from Africa. He met his queen in Queens. And, okay. He had an opportunity to work, believe it or not, at JP Morgan, which is not Morgan Stanley, but in their IT department, and really made a career there. We had an opportunity to move from Brooklyn to Long Island to a house. At that time, I can't believe this, 1978, houses were $45,000, the same houses that are now like $600,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I grew up in Long Island in Suffolk County in a little town called North Babylon. I would say my first influences, to be honest, were my mom and dad. My dad, unfortunately, I took after him with our long commute. He commuted from Long Island to Manhattan every day. I now commute from South Jersey to Manhattan every day, which is a 2-hour door-to-door commute every 3 days out of the week. And my mom was always there for us in terms of, like, being at the house. She worked, but it never really felt like she worked, because I felt like she was always there. And she was the kind of person that always sort of looked young and was like the young parent. And also she would never leave the house not looking like, without her makeup and hair done and all that stuff. So I think I got a little bit of that from her. I go to the supermarket, I can't look crazy when I walk out the door. They never really pressured me to do well in school. I never really felt that pressure. I always just felt love. Like, I always just felt like I had their support in everything that I did, which was really, really important and probably part of my parenting style. I also danced my entire time, elementary through high school. And we had a dance teacher by the name of Miss Beard, who's no longer with us, who I spent a lot of time in her dance studio. And she was a major influence in that whole sort of dance structure, and the friends that I had in that dance school, very important to me. I went through public school throughout from kindergarten, I guess, till 12th grade in our neighborhood. Actually, I started, I guess, 6th grade there. I mean, kindergarten there. And so I never went to like the big thing now is private schools and independent schools and charter schools. Never did any of that. And I didn't have a specific teacher that stands out, to be honest. I hate to say that, because I'm sure they all were great. I had a few teachers that stand out for bad reasons, but I didn't have that. I would say my parents were my biggest influence, but not because they pushed me a certain kind of way. It was more their actions and their words, and they allowed me to one, just feel loved so I can do the things that I wanted to do, extracurricular things as well as academic.
Absolutely. And so what do I have to understand about your earliest years to understand who you are today?
Hmm. That's a good one. I would say I've always been very self-motivated. And if, like I said, my parents weren't like pushing always for good grades. They weren't tiger parents. You know how people just like on top, like the parents today, including myself in some ways, very involved, too involved. I was always self-motivated. And so I got my work done. I never needed anyone to say, is this due? Is that due? Like I just got it done. I remember there was a time when I just wanted to attend church services. Like we weren't regular church goers in my house, but I would walk I wanted to go. So I would walk to the local church and just go. So I felt like that has definitely carried through to today in terms of just being self-motivated to do the things that I want to do.
Okay. Let's talk about your time at Spelman. So you're this East Coast girl, you're Brooklyn, you're Long Island, you're living this East Coast lifestyle, and then you find yourself in the South, in Atlanta. What was that experience like going from the East Coast to Atlanta?
Woo, that was a culture shock. I have to tell you. First of all, almost everything I am today is due to my time at Spelman. Spelman, I have a debt to Spelman that I will never, ever be able to repay, ever, no matter how much I try. And I'm trying in every way. But it was a huge culture shock to go to Atlanta because, when you're from New York, you talk really fast. You're not known to be all that friendly. and so everything slowed down for me. Like, first of all, just getting used to the accents, that was hilarious. And then also, people were friendly. I would walk down the street and someone would say hi. And I'm like, why are they speaking to me? Why are they saying hi? So it's actually changed me for the better. I've slowed down my speech a little bit. I'm definitely much friendly as a result of it. And it gave me an opportunity to see the many different sides or diversity of Black people. I was not expecting that when I went to Spelman. Just this difference in socioeconomic status, the difference in beliefs, the difference in North versus South versus West. I would say some of my best friends and my husband are from the Maryland, DC area. And I didn't know much about anything outside of New York, I'll be honest. So just getting an opportunity to learn about different people, to see that, in many ways, we're so different, Black people. And just to have an opportunity to learn in an environment where race and gender are held constant. So at Spelman, it's all women, all Black women, and you're just allowed to be excellent. You have people who are there to support you. Again, you don't have to worry about, did this happen because I'm Black or did this happen because I'm a woman? No, it's an environment that is built for you to just be excellent. And that to me was like the biggest blessing to have that. I mean, we were also blessed to be across the street from a whole school of Black men at Morehouse. And that's how I met my husband. He happened to be on Spelman's campus at a time when my dorm was throwing a party. And just seeing that Black excellence, I think, in that environment really shaped who I am today.
That's amazing. I mean, just listening to your story, and I don't even have a question about this, but just listening to your story, it's almost like the Black fairy tale, right? It's like you go to Spelman, you meet your husband who goes to Howard, you guys get married. What's that?
I said he was Morehouse.
Yeah, I said Howard. Sorry, I mean Morehouse.
Okay.
You meet your husband who goes to Morehouse. You're in law, he's in medicine. It's just beautiful. Talk to me about your time at Spelman. Were you, during that time, you knew for a fact you wanted to be a lawyer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any idea on what law schools you wanted to go to at that time?
No, I did not at that time. And I was still a little green. Like I was talking to somebody about law school who was also like, she was a senior and she was thinking about law school. And I think she mentioned like, oh, so you want a JD? I had no idea a JD was a Juris Doctorate. Like I didn't know I was even going for a JD, And so I didn't have those kind of influences at home. I really didn't. I was the first person in my family to go to college. I really didn't have no lawyers or have those role models. So it was funny that I didn't even know when I was there, even though I wanted to be a lawyer, that I didn't know what a JD was. And so, but I did know I wanted to do that. I didn't know what law school. I, you always have these, the Ivy Leagues in your head, like, oh, it'd be great to go to Harvard Law or to, all these other places. And so I had those like in my head, but I really, the thing that drove me to Howard was, one, I loved my experience at HBCU. That
Yeah.
absolutely hands down. Two, like I said earlier, I thought I would, potentially go into civil rights or some type of defense work, or even maybe prosecution, which I don't know if I would have stayed in prosecution long, given sort of how the system works now. And the third one, which is, I hate to say, but it's the truth. My husband was in the Maryland, D.C. area. And I wanted to, at the time, he was my boyfriend. I shouldn't have been following my boyfriend all around the country, but but I really wanted to be by him again. I graduated a year before he did. And so we spent a year apart. And so I kind of knew when I went to law school, I wanted to be at least in the DMV area.
Absolutely. But, let's dig into that, though, because there's been a lot of conversation about, Black women who are, pursuing a higher education, and upward mobility, and how oftentimes people feel like you have to now sacrifice a personal life or, wanting to be married or wanting to start a family or have kids. And you found a way to navigate both simultaneously, where you're pursuing your career, but you and your husband were pursuing each other at the same time. Yeah. What advice would you have for some young woman, or actually even young male as well, who wants to do both? They want to have an incredible career, but they also want to, have a family and be married.
Woo. Yeah. That's a good one. I mean, I always start with pursue your career, nurture your relationship. The career stuff goes by, so it can go by so fast. And the reason why I just gave this advice, which is why I'm trying to dig back to where I actually said my son and my daughter actually have long-term relationships, folks that they've met in college, but they're also in different states pursuing their stuff. One is, pursuing law school, the other one's just starting their career in a field that they love. And it's important for them to do that. And I think ultimately to make sure you're fulfilling yourself in that way. It's also important for you to continue to nurture love. And I personally think that it all works out in the end, right? And so that's probably not great advice, but I did, in pursuit of both, I've made sacrifices either way. So when I started my first job, my husband was, I guess he was my husband at the time, so then it makes it a little easier to follow them, but was starting medical school. That meant I had to change jobs, because medical school and then, fellowships and internships move you from city to city. And so I think it comes with sacrifices. You have to figure out what sacrifices you should make, you're willing to make, and you also have to make sure you're both willing to make those sacrifices. Mm-hmm. There are times when you can't. If somebody's in law school and somebody's starting their first job, you're going to be in different cities, right? How are you going to make that work? But when you have an opportunity to get together and make choices, someone is going to have to make a sacrifice. And so that's when you kind of figure out, is this meant to be or not? Because we've both had to make sacrifices along the way. I would say because his particular path had to be a little bit more regimented, I had to make lots of the sacrifices very early on, for sure. And then, when he's been able to repay that, and I'm like, well, now I got to dig into my career here or dig into this. He's been able to make those sacrifices as well. So it's not, you can't really have it all at all the same time. You are going to have to make some sacrifices along the way.
Absolutely. And to dig into the word sacrifice, talk to me about your thought process, because it's a lot of conversation right now going on about work-life balance. Talk to me about your philosophy on that. How do you approach that, as a mother, as a wife, as somebody who has, done an incredible job of climbing the corporate ladder at one of the most well-known companies in the world? how do you juggle or balance all of these things simultaneously?
Yeah, my philosophy is there's really no such thing as balance. It's not going to balance. Stop trying to balance it. My chief legal officer, who's been at the company for 16 years, I think said it best. It's not work-life balance. It's all life. It really is all life. And so the minute I sort of really bought into that, I said, well, there are things I got to do. There's some times where I'm going to have to spend more time at work. There's sometimes I'm going to have to spend more time at home. There are things I want to make that my kids are doing that I'm going to make. It may mean that I have to make certain sacrifices at work. Throughout my 19 years at Morgan Stanley, I've had to lean in, I've had to lean out, right? And so it hasn't been like the straight journey to managing director. There are plenty of times where I had to say, like a good example of this is, in 2006, after only being at the company for 2 years, I asked for a hybrid work arrangement. So I've been working from home 2 days a week since 2006, way pre-pandemic and way before anybody was ever doing it, because I felt that can help me balance my life a little bit more. Like, again, no balance, but at least I'm home, when it's time I don't have the commuting time. I'm able to have more flexibility. And so it's really about looking at it as life. I'm going to do the things that I need to do at home. I'm going to do the things I need to do at work. And sometimes it means late nights for me. Sometimes it means early mornings. If I want to I remember my son had, when he was on junior varsity, he had games at 3:45 in the afternoon. And I didn't want to miss a football game. So I would work from home those days. I'd go to his games, but I know whatever time I spent away from the office, I would just give that back, right? It may be later at night. But I think the biggest, there are three things that make it a little easier in terms of being a working mom that I found. One is having a partner in parenting. So you and your spouse, or you and your partner, whoever it may be, have to be partners when it comes to parenting. The other is good childcare. You have to have good, reliable childcare. For a long time, that was my mom who helped me out. And other times it was just really good babysitters. And then the last thing really is flexibility in the workplace. I've always been blessed with having a flexible work environment. It doesn't mean that there are times when, I was passed over for this or that, or new opportunity, or even promotion. But I've always had the opportunity to lean in and lean out when I needed to, as it related to my family.
Awesome. So, Alita, wrapping up, I have a few questions I want to ask you. The first question is, what advice would you give to the 18-year-old you? If you had to go back in time and give yourself some advice, knowing all that you've learned at Spelman, all that you've learned in law school, all that you've learned working at Morgan Stanley, what advice would you give that 18-year-old girl headed down to Atlanta?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I think I definitely would tell that 18-year-old girl that, lead with confidence, have confidence. You have more in you than you think you do, in terms of knowledge, in terms of, what you bring to the table, and just be confident in your gifts. And I think it took me a long time to figure that out. I also would tell that 18-year-old girl, build relationships, do your best to come out of your comfort zone and meet people, build relationships with people that look different than you. Again, that's something that took me a long time to do, and like the power of networking. And maybe the last thing I would tell myself is travel, do adventurous things. Life comes at you fast, and next thing you know, you have lots of responsibilities. I probably would have done more of that pre-marriage and pre-children if I knew to do that.
That's one of the best. That's one of the best answers I've gotten from that question. Thank you. in the effort to leave some breadcrumbs for our viewers, the question I have for you is, what book or books have had a very major impact on your life that maybe it will be a good idea for some of our viewers to read if they want to mirror some of the success that you've been able to accomplish?
Yeah, the first book I would mention is just my favorite, all-time favorite, and it's called Why We Can't Wait, and that is by Martin Luther King. And there's one portion in the book which is his letter from a Birmingham jail, and it was a letter to the clergy, throughout the nation, that was basically urging him to wait on this movement, things that he was trying to do. And as a fellow clergyman, he really wanted to address that. And the whole thing, the title of the book is Why We Can't Wait, but it's really based around this letter to the clergy. And the way that he wrote that letter, how he described all of the things that was leading up to the actions that he was taking now, and why basically there was no time to wait, like this was the time to do it. It was really, really a masterclass in persuasion. And as a lawyer, that's kind of all you have, your writing and your oral ability to persuade. And I've never seen someone write as brilliantly as Dr. Martin Luther King in this letter. And it really was a guide for me as I thought about how do I persuade whoever, whether it's in law, my day job, I'm currently having to persuade people. And it just showed me how brilliant he was outside of the civil rights work that he did. So I really love that book, that letter. I try to read, I'm not going to say annually, but when I get a chance to do it, I definitely do it again as much as I can. And I just encourage anyone, even if you don't want to read the whole book, which is relatively short, read that letter from a Birmingham jail. It's just amazing. And then I would just say more recently, I read the book Cast, and that was so eye-opening. That was a much longer book, but the research that was Isabel Wilkerson that put into that book about our history, the folks that she spoke to, the way that she was able to tie some of the things that happen in sort of Germany and India and other places that relate to the Black culture and our history was so enlightening for me, but it also the research that she did was amazing. And so I really appreciated the work that she put into that and the things that I learned as a result. And then she wrote another book, The Warmth of, I'm probably going to get the title of this wrong, but about the warmth of other suns, I think is entitled, but it's about the Great Migration of Black people from like the deep South to places like Chicago, New York, Philadelphia. And also that Cast inspired me to read that book, in which I learned a lot as well. Lots of great books out there. We started a book club at the Legal and Compliance Division at Morgan Stanley. So I've had an opportunity to read all types of books, and Cast was one of the books that we chose to read. And that really had a huge impact on my life as well.
That's amazing. I will definitely be picking up that Why We Can't Wait book by MLK Jr. I have read The Cast and Warmth of Other Suns. Those books were definitely impactful for me as well. So getting into kind of wrapping up and getting into the foundation and the inspiration for this podcast, our focus is to be able to build a community of mentors and mentees, whether it's just digital where people are watching this and getting, kind of some digital mentorship, or whether it's relational as well. I guess the question I have for you is, are you currently mentoring someone? Have you mentored people in the past? If so, are you open to us connecting you to someone who may reach out to us who wants to follow in your footsteps in law or banking or just being an awesome woman like you are?
Absolutely. First of all, I'm on LinkedIn, so anyone can feel free to connect with me. I probably spend more time mentoring and talking to folks, especially folks who look like us, than Morgan Stanley probably wants me to, but I do anyway, because most of the time it's about helping people build their careers. I spent, I've been in the game for a while. I probably have maybe another 10, 15 tops years in this career or working in this way. And honestly, that's what it's all about at the end of the day, giving back. And the way I try to give back, lots of ways, but one very important way is pouring into the sort of the pipeline and next generation of people. So folks know they can reach out to me. I am constantly talking to folks in my role as co-chair of the Black Employee Network. It puts me out there in that way as well. But it really is a great honor to me when people reach out to me and want to talk about their career. And anything I can do to stop someone from making some of the mistakes that I made, I definitely want to do that. And so, there's a lot of challenges just being Black in corporate America, being a Black woman in corporate America. And I don't only mentor and sponsor people who look like me. I have lots and lots of folks who I talk to on a regular basis that don't. But we have some special challenges and special things that we need to address, and special ways that we have to address them. So I try my best to be in front of folks in our community as much as possible. So I spend an enormous amount of time doing it. Sometimes it's early nights and late mornings to get other things done as a result, but that's important to me. It really is one of the core values that I have, and really a family core value. Both my husband and I serve as mentors to a lot of folks in our industries.
That is amazing. Alita, that's it. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. You are very inspirational, listening to your story and what you've accomplished, your passion for being able to give back. You've definitely really touched me and inspired me to be better, to serve more, to help more people out. I would definitely love to stay in touch with you. I may be sending you an email or a text asking some questions as well. Thank you. Thank you so much for reaching out. So if anybody wants to get connected with us, Wingfield again, Alita Wingfield on LinkedIn, you can connect with her there. Again, just thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me anytime. And like you said, if anyone wants to reach out, feel free to do that. And just remember always to be your authentic self. That is the key.
Thank you so much.